Where are the Democrats demanding that there be an investigation?
No
of
one
this
is defending
person?
Bill Clinton. I'll do it right now. Bill Clinton, if there are photos, an investigation should open. Now listen,
is there more evidence that Bill Clinton did something wrong than Donald Trump?
The problem with Donald Trump is listen, the problem with, let me finish.
Hey, let me finish. People are so outraged. I wasn't stop talking. People are so outraged. You're so outraged.
Hey guys, I'm Mike, and I came across this clip from CNN's Abby Phillip show where progressive host Adam Mockler joins the panel for a roundtable debate. As usual on Abby Phillip's program, the discussion features sharp ideological contrasts, but Adam Mockler stands out for directly engaging opposing viewpoints without backing down. Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Let's get into it together.
Let me just read for you, actually. This is Marjorie Taylor Greene. She says, this is horrifying. Trump called me a traitor for fighting him to release the Epstein Files and standing with women who were raped, jailed, in stalls, and trafficked to men. Only evil people would hide this and protect those who participated. I pray for these women. The files today, I mean, people's names in terms of people who were involved, allegedly, are not in here. But it's very clear that there was something big happening behind the scenes. Tons of victims, tons and tons of evidence. That's why, going back to what we were talking about in the beginning, if you know anything about this case, it seems entirely improbable that it was limited just to the two individuals who we know are named, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell.
This is why I believe that Ghislaine Maxwell's statement to Todd Blanche, 9 hours recorded, right? The audio's out there now, was so utterly non-credible, was so utterly non-believable, because Ghislaine Maxwell's version of events was nobody did anything wrong here except maybe Jeffrey Epstein. Ghislaine Maxwell said, I did nothing wrong. If you believe that the only people who did anything wrong are the two people who've been indicted for this, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, I don't know what to tell you. But I want to point out another thing that DOJ is doing, to your point, Abby, that violates the law. DOJ has decided we are going to redact out the names of people who might have done wrong, but this might be embarrassing to. I understand that instinct, but let me read you what the law, the Epstein Transparency Act, says. It says no record shall be withheld on the basis of embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity, including to any government official, public figure, or foreign dignitary. Now, if you don't like that, that's fine. But this is what the law says. And DOJ has said, we're going to take out those names anyway.
That's astonishing. What's astonishing is that DOJ is just flouting the law.
Well, let's put in context for the viewers, though, how unusual that is. Because I think we got a lot of lawyers and former lawyers on this panel. I think it is so unusual that I think the execution of it has some folks in the DOJ who have been there 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, as a lot of career people are, confounded. Because it's not what the policy has been.
Unusual, but it's the law.
Well, it doesn't make it impossible.
So what are you going to do? You're just going to ignore it?
I mean, that's right. I mean, Mark's right that all of this is contrary to what DOJ would ordinarily do. You'd never dump all of our investigative files. Right. You'd never name names of people who weren't indicted. But the law that passed 427-1 in the House, unanimous in the Senate, that Trump signed, says you have to do it this way. I think there's a lesson here, by the way. I think this law is overbroad. I think this law is leading us into dead ends, is leading us into all sorts of documents that are presented without context, but they have to follow it.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Yes. I mean, isn't the remedy for this, I don't know. They
don't have a remedy. They have to follow
can't they challenge it?
No, I don't think DOJ has a basis to say, well, I guess
they challenge the constitutionality.
Theoretically, I guess.
If the idea is that maybe people's rights are being infringed upon, would they not challenge the constitutionality of a law that forces them to infringe on maybe people's right to not self-incriminate or whatever it is?
It's a good question. Yeah, I think if DOJ was independent, they could go into court and say, yes, this violates the rights of uncharged people, the presumption of innocence. Pam Bondi has chosen not to do that.
Yeah. Let me play what the victims have been saying all day today. This is just a snippet of the reaction among some of the women who have come forward about their involvement in the Epstein saga.
I think that Pam Bondi and Kash Patel both need to resign, and I would love to see number 47 get impeached over this.
They are re-victimizing us in the same way. They gave us this moment of the Transparency Act where we passed a law and we were like, we're seen, we're here, we've arrived. And now to see the carelessness of the way that they're handling, survivors, it's just abhorrent. It's exhausting.
It's hard to hear that. It's hard to watch these women, as she said, be re-victimized. DOJ officials were saying, well, if you have a problem with how we're doing this, you know how to reach me, just call me. Some of them have. Nobody's done anything about their names being in these documents.
But Abby, that's the very reason why the sensitivity and the typical policy of the DOJ in conjunction with these investigations is what it is to avoid re-victimizing
But it
people.
is not happening. That is the problem.
We have photographs of a woman, more than one woman, who were clearly victimized, clearly trafficked. They've been adjudicated to have been victimized and trafficked. Receiving massages and being intimately touched by one of the most influential and consequential political figures in the United States of America, and that's Bill Clinton. Where are the Democrats demanding that there be an investigation of this person?
No one is defending Bill Clinton. I'll do it right now. Bill Clinton, if there are photos, an investigation should open. Now listen.
Let me pause here for a moment before Adam Mockler goes any further, because this is an important pattern that keeps showing up in these debates. You hear it constantly from MAGA-aligned commentators, including Joe Borelli in this segment. The moment accountability comes up, the response is almost automatic. Well, what about Bill Clinton? Here's the thing, though. That argument doesn't land the way they think it does. Among voters and commentators on the left, there isn't some unified effort to defend Bill Clinton at all costs. You don't see people arguing that anyone should be above the law because of party loyalty. The prevailing view is pretty straightforward. If someone committed crimes, investigate them. And if the evidence supports it, prosecute them. That standard applies across the board, regardless of party or political legacy. So when MAGA voices pivot to what about someone else instead of addressing the issue directly in front of them, it comes off less like a defense and more like an attempt to change the subject. It avoids engaging with the substance of the criticism and turns the conversation into a comparison game rather than a discussion about accountability. And that's why this tactic feels so worn out. Instead of grappling with the facts at hand, the focus shifts to dragging in unrelated figures from the past. It doesn't resolve anything, and it doesn't answer the question being asked. It just delays the conversation and keeps it spinning in circles.
Yeah, Bill Clinton did something wrong with Donald Trump.
The problem with Donald Trump is listen, the problem with, let me finish.
But
Hey, let me
people
finish.
are so
The problem
outraged.
with Donald
I wasn't
Trump-
stop talking.
the
People
prob-
are so outraged. You're so outraged about Trump being in a photograph.
The
that
problem
was
with Donald
doctored,
Trump is
you
his
know,
repeated
with
abuse
boxes.
of power dynamics. Throughout Donald Trump's entire life, he has abused power dynamics.
Wasn't screwing underage girls like Bill Clinton.
He
though,
walked
was he,
into
though?
dressing rooms after he
diddling
owned the
girls.
beauty pageant. Have you seen the Howard
Bill
Stern
Clinton
clip where he
is
walked into
the
dressing
villain.
rooms?
Bill Clinton,
He says he
Prince
grabs
Andrew,
women because
God
they let him do
knows
it. You
who
can
else.
just keep talking over me. Can I say
Those
something?
are the enemy.
All right,
Those are the bad
let's
guys.
do this one at a time. Adam, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was trying to make a broader point that there's no criminal activity that has been proven with Trump, but his entire life has been spent abusing power dynamics. I don't even know if he knows what power dynamics are. He bragged about walking into the beauty pageant dressing rooms, and 15-year-old girls then corroborated that and said he would walk into the dressing rooms. Abuse of power dynamics. He said he grabbed women because they let him do it. You heard that clip, right? You've heard that clip. Abuse of power dynamics. Abuse of power dynamics. Now that he's in office, he's abusing these same power dynamics to cover up the files, delay the releases, redact the releases.
Joe,
I don't care about Bill Clinton,
Joe, go ahead and respond.
Do we all agree that Bill Clinton
Bring it back to
probably molested women? I'm not laughing.
No,
at that.
actually, wait. Actually,
do we all agree?
There are more photos of Epstein and Trump than Epstein and Clinton.
Molested children?
Hold on a second, Joe. No, we do not know that Bill Clinton.
He's
did
not
what
in
you
a
are
picture with you, Fred.
Joe,
He's not in a
we
picture
do
with
not
you.
know that Bill Clinton is doing what
Is there
you are
more
alleging.
evidence that Bill
We do
Clinton
not
acted
know
inappropriately
that
about
Donald
women who were
Trump
Where
has
was
done
Jufrey
anything
trafficked out of, huh?
inappropriate.
Where was Jufrey trafficked out of?
Hold on a second. Seriously. I think both of you, I get it, right? Like, there is a lot of politics involved here. But at the end of the day, there are people involved. We don't know all of them, who they are. The political world is now focused only on two men for competing political reasons. And the people left in the rubble of that are women who were actually trafficked. This doesn't make any sense.
One of them,
Your
the women have said
entire
consistently
focus
that they were not touched by Donald Trump.
But your entire focus on just these two individuals completely obscures the bigger picture.
I'm not. I
get
just
what
know
you're
that there's
saying.
a photo of that guy.
All I will say,
I don't know the other people.
Hold on a second. All I will say about Bill Clinton is I take him at his word that they want every document released. They don't think they have anything to hide. I would like to see President Trump and his administration say and act similarly, because I think that would be refreshing for the political system. Let's all sides
sign
of
the
this
law.
just say put it all out.
Let's talk about one of the areas where things have really gone wrong with this situation, why we wound up with this Epstein Transparency Act that directs the DOJ to do something that have no historical precedent to my knowledge, right? And I practiced law for a couple of years too, as you know. Why did it take this long? How many presidential administrations? How many reviews of these investigations? Why does it take this kind of an extraordinary act that is re-victimizing these poor women once again? What's been going on for the past 15 years? That's what we should be asking.
That is the question.
That's what we should be asking.
One of the few important, indisputable things that we've learned from this is that victims were coming forward to the FBI as early as 1996.
Yeah.
There's a lesson there. Forget about your politics. There's a lesson there in being responsive to victims and giving them a fair hearing. Look, the original sin in this case was 2007, 2008, when Alexander Acosta, who was the U.S. attorney for the time, gave this absurd softball deal to Jeffrey Epstein, let him serve 13 months in state custody instead of he should have done decades in federal prison. By the way, that's one of the outstanding questions here. It's one of the things we've not yet seen in these documents. What were those prosecutors in that office saying? Because we know from prior OPR reports that there were prosecutors in that office. Maria Villafana is the name of one of them. That's public, who objected to that softball deal. That's something we need for accountability.
Some of the many documents I think that the victims want are are things that speak to that. They want to see more financial documents. You know, I think that in a way, when you hear them, they're not as worked up about these photographs as many of the people in the public are, because they want the investigative documents that point to what happened in these investigations. Why was that 1996 complaint not ever followed? What does it say on the flight manifests and the ledgers, the financial ledgers? Important information that's not out yet, should have been out last Friday. But here we are, law just being kind of casually flouted by the administration. We'll see how long that...
I don't think anyone should be surprised by this kind of response, because we've seen it play out again and again in political debates. Abby Phillip raises a fair point about taking people at their word, but where I differ slightly is on the broader idea that credibility alone should settle these questions. When serious allegations exist, regardless of who they involve, the only reasonable approach is transparency, investigation, and letting the legal process do its job. This isn't about defending one political figure by attacking another. It's about applying the same standard across the board. If there are credible accusations involving Bill Clinton, they should be examined. If there are credible accusations involving Donald Trump, they should be examined too. Accountability shouldn't depend on party, ideology, or who someone voted for. What often muddies the conversation is how quickly it turns into another round of whataboutism. Instead of engaging with the issue at hand, some commentators pivot to arguing that focusing on one person is unfair unless everyone else is discussed at the same time. But holding one individual accountable doesn't mean excusing anyone else. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive. There's also a tendency for these debates to become cyclical. Years from now, people will still be arguing over who was treated unfairly and who wasn't, regardless of what official conclusions are reached. That's why simply deflecting to "what about someone else" doesn't actually move the conversation forward. It just keeps it stuck in the same loop. At the end of the day, this segment didn't introduce much that was new. It reinforced a familiar dynamic. One side pushing for accountability, the other responding with deflection instead of direct answers. Whether you agree more with Adam Mockler's approach or with the arguments coming from Joe Borelli, that pattern is hard to ignore. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you agree with how this issue was framed on Abby Phillip's show? Or do you think these conversations need to be handled differently going forward?